Hey, it's David here. How much is enough? You say, how much is enough for what, David? That's the exact point. I was having a great conversation with a dentist in mid-career, mid-career being in mid-40s. And this dentist had gone through residency, had two practices with a partner, had a passive interest, a silent interest in two other practices. So really had built up some significant business interest and quite a producer in dentistry himself. Here's the issue: living a good lifestyle, making good income, worked hard to get there. First child, 8-month old baby, now in the realm with the family unit. And he's thinking the right way, in my opinion, at least asking the right questions. And he's thinking ahead. And first he told me, he said, well, he said from his culture, when he grew up, his parents uh, just worked and worked and worked. I mean, the work ethic was there all day long. And he said, but they were never with us. The family unit was just always about work, 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 and they provided for us. He said he's grateful, loves his parents, right? No issue there. But he said the way his parents, when he grew up, the way his parents showed love to him was by working really, really hard to make sure they provided for the family. And I know this doctor had some thoughts about that, and now with his child, uh, his family is just now starting to grow. He's thinking, does he want to do the same thing? Not that he's not able and capable of working hard; he already shown that. But now he has a different perspective, and that is, how does he want to show up as a father, and also as a husband, as a spouse? These dynamics change, as we all know, as you start to go through life, and our priorities shift, or at least our thinking starts to shift in terms of what is this really all about. And I'll get back to how much is enough because this is where this is going. So as we talk through it, he has some goals in place, and I asked him, well, what do your goals mean? He said, well, I want to have. I'll just throw out the numbers because you don't know his name, and I'm going to keep this anonymous, of course. But he said he wanted to have $10 to $11 million in investable assets, outside of his practice, or maybe after he sold some of his practice interests. He wanted that much, and I said, well, why that much? Why not more? Why not less? He said, well, he said he's basing it on that he thinks he can get 10% on his money, on a passive basis, investing money 10% passive basis. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. I'm not to say you can't. I certainly have done it, but the more capital you have that you need to invest at a certain rate of return, the harder it gets, particularly in the volatility of a marketplace. If you've got smaller amounts of money, you're able to direct that money yourself, whether it's in your own business, your practice, or if you go out and buy rental properties, just to take a sideline, is you can direct that money. And with being really hands-on with a smaller amount of money, whether it's a couple $100,000 or maybe even up to $1 million, you can direct that money, but you have to be relatively active with it to drive higher returns than say 10%. I mean, working with capital in your hands, you can drive returns of 50% or more, but you can't do that with massive amounts of capital. So 10 or $11 million, can you hit 10% with the volatility of the marketplace today without taking undue risk? I don't know. I'm not saying you can't, but I'm saying that might be tricky to try to do. Anyway, that was his number, because he thought if you got 10% on say $10 million, that's $1 million per year in, quote, passive, or what I call replacement income. Because replacement income that you don't have to work for. It's based on an asset that you built, created, and you no longer have to show up, at least on a regular basis. You can run operations, someone else runs operations. You're a passive investor of some kind. You're a lender, where you don't have to be involved in operations. That's what replacement income is about to me. And that's what we all have to build toward at some point when we want to take some time away from our active labor. And that's what he was thinking about. He says, my daughter's 8 months old. He said, I want to be available for her when she's 8. I thought, okay, well, again, why 8? Why not sooner, right? Or why not later? Just again, people pick random numbers. What I find all the time, whether they pick random numbers in terms of what net worth they think they need to have to be free, or what kind of income they need to have to hit some milestones, or in this case, how much income they think they need. And then so I asked him. I said, the information you gave me, you said that your lifestyle, not how much income you make working, that's a lot more, but what's your lifestyle require you? And the number he sent back to me was 15,000 a month. Even number, 15,000. Well, I know that's just a throw at the wall. And people do that all the time. Why? Because they don't really know. And look, let's be fair. When you're blessed and capable of earning a lot of capital by working hard as a professional in some regard, then you don't have to really worry that much about what your actual burn rate is for your lifestyle. You make enough. You can go back and fight for another day, and you can make enough to keep your head above water, or even do better than that. But when it comes down to how much it really take to sustain your lifestyle at a certain point in time, nobody really knows because they don't run the numbers. Until you know what your numbers are, you can't really set milestones to determine how much is enough at different points of your life. So when I talked about what his goals were, it was about his daughter. So I said, let's get back to reality. It's not about net worth here necessarily, is it? Because he's making up these numbers. $10 million, 10% return on that money. That's $1 million in passive income. Now there's some taxes to pay on that, but let's just leave that out for a minute. Even after tax, that's a lot of money, passive income. $83,000 per month is what that comes down to. And let's say you pay tax on that and it leaves you with around 50. Well, that's still a pretty darn good lifestyle if that's passive income and you've built that up to do that. But I said so by when she's 8 years old, your daughter, that's when you want to have all this passive income so that you can freewheel. You can do what you want to. And he goes, yeah, that's what I want. And I said, okay. Well, how are you going to get there? And because right now, while he has these interests in other practices, how much is that equity really worth today? You don't know until you go to put it on the market. That's the problem. Is in private markets, which is what we have when we have dental practices, we don't know at any given moment what that practice is worth. We can guess, but then we have to take into consideration, net after sales, commissions, cost of sale, transactional. We have to look at the taxation on the gain of that asset, the practice we're selling, and we also have to consider any debt that remains on the asset, if there is any, to pay that off. So what's left over after you net all that out? That's what you've got. And so it's really hard to peg a number on what his net worth is today. But I said, how are you going to get there? Because he wants to be, he said he wanted to have 10 to $11 million, and not just in 8 years from now, but he said he'd like to see that happen like in 3 years, or start selling some of the interest in 3 years. And I said, well, how do you know how you're going to do that? How do you know what those numbers are going to be? He goes, well, I don't really know. Again, it's like throwing darts at a dartboard and just having them land somewhere. And this is the problem. This is a problem that I see over and over again with a lack of specificity. The goals that people set are not realistic because they have no harness on the time period. So let's break this back down. 8 years old is when your daughter's 8 years old. That's when you want to be free. Well, why not sooner? Don't you want to start enjoying her when she's 2 and crawling around and starting to express her first words? And 3 and 4 and 5. What's this 8 years old thing? Because I said for a daughter, I said, trust me, when she's 10, she's going to think she's 18 or 20, and she's not going to want to do the same thing she will do with you when she's younger. So try to give them the conception of is why is this 8 years old so important to you? Why not start building a timetable with milestones that are specific enough that you feel good about your progress toward the financial realm that you want to have, got that, but also the time freedom. This is the key, the time freedom you want to have at these different stages, not just 8 years old, but about time freedom in a year, and 2 years, and 3 years. Granted, as she gets a little bit older, it's going to be more fun, but even these early years, if we all remember back when we had our kids, they're all precious moments. And maybe you don't spend as much time in those early years, but you still want to be available. You don't be stressed out, because this doc said, I don't take any vacations. He's taken on the culture of his parents, and he doesn't even know it. He's grinding because that's who he is. And so I said, what you've got to do is you've got to build a mindset. Now, here's the problem. His wife's really busy in a new role as a mother. Total game changer in her life, right? And I said, but for you to build a game plan that you're both comfortable with, you're going to have to get on the same page together. I said, that's the tricky part, because now you're both in somewhat different worlds. Yes, you're married with a partnership. You've always been the slayer of dragons. You've been out there working. I'm not sure if she had a career or not. I don't know that. Good chance she did. And now she's brought that back in because she can financially. She wants to be a mother, a nurturer, a protector of the home is what I look at many of the females. That's what they do really, really well. And that's something that as guys, we appreciate that. We can't do it as well. It's a full-time job. There's oftentimes it's taken for granted, and they don't get the compensation or accolades that we do by doing all our great work outside. That's just another conversation that has to be had, I think, for a lot of couples. But that's not the point. My point is a common vision for what each person wants. Yes, the person who's out there, the actual breadwinner to create the income and build the financial fortress, that's important. And wives or the other spouse appreciate that, whoever that may be. but also the appreciation for who's protecting the home and helping really nurture the kids, doing that together. But a common vision is critical. And if you don't have that, then you can't figure out what's going to make the whole model work in terms of the financial part. You have to reverse engineer, but you can only do that as a couple. If you're trying to do it by yourself and your spouse is not involved, you're going to have your ideas and she is not part of the mix because you don't know how to translate into a common denominator. That's what we do in Freedom Founders. That's what I've learned to do. That's what I've had to do in my own life, many times not doing it well at all. But the key to everything we've done in Freedom Founders is the blueprint weekends, where couples come together, and many times the spouse, the non breadwinning spouse, non practice owning spouse, reluctantly comes. What am I coming here for? This is all just about investment, and I don't care about that. He does that, and this is not going to get me anywhere, is what she's thinking most of the time. But after she comes and she finds out that her voice is important, and we have a way of allowing that to happen in a way that's not confrontational, but allows her to speak what's important to her. And when she's heard for the first time, not just by me or the other people in the room, but by her husband, or could be the other way around. Could be the wife. When they're heard for the first time, that's where the magic happens. Now we've got a basis or a framework from which all the other iterations of practice, growth, scale, when we exit, how we build time into our lives, because that's the critical part. You see, everything we do in our life is we want to have more time, but we don't know how to achieve that until we get to some mystical retirement age when we try to harvest everything and go, well, is that enough? Nobody ever knows, because we've got to create the time and the replacement income and build that back into the lifestyle that we want in our lives. A lot there. I can't unfold it all in a relatively short video, but if this is the key that I see that's missing in everybody else's financial lives. Hardworking, successful by all of societies and the industry's definitions, but life itself and creating the time so there's no regrets down the road is the key thing that I think is missing for most. That's what I want for you. If you're missing that, I've got some ways you can interact with us, with me, and find out some of the tools that we use to do that. You can link up. There's different ways. I'll put links here in the video of how you can connect with me in different ways. And if this is interesting to you and you want to figure out how to do this, I've had the pleasure, my wife and I, of doing this for hundreds of couples. Our community is really strong based on this. It's very, very relationally based. Oh yes, finance. Yes, we talk heavily about finance. Investment allocations. Oh yes, we talk about that. It's important. But the key to life is putting this all into perspective. And that's a tough thing for us to do if we're grinders, and most of us are. Hope this helps you. It's all about your freedom.